The continuing saga of mounting this waterproof gland, I think I have the solution. So I'm exchanging these threaded screws for through bolts. I don't have to rely on the epoxy to hold a thread. I'm gonna have a nut on the back side of this. So here's approximately where the radar is gonna mount. I get so frustrated with this. They ship with this cable probably cost me $100 to replace if I had to buy a new one. And it has this proprietary connector on this end and a proprietary connector on that end. It only connects to the vendor stuff. It's not like a standard connector you can buy. And they give you it in a fixed length. I don't want to run this cable from the radar all the way to the radar controller. I want to run it from the radar to the base of the mast and then have some connector that runs, so a second length of cable runs from the base of the mast back to the sending unit, the control unit, the brain, whatever it is. That way I can unstep the mast without having to feed cable, step and unstep without having to feed cable. But anyway, I've marked on the cable the minimum length I need for the mast. So I've just kind of roughly laid out the radar cable where it's going to go to the base of the mast and marked how much I need, minimum, and then followed up. And there's the other mark from when I had it on the mast. So I have, I don't know, about 6 foot of cable that, based on these measurements, is going to get thrown away. But for safety's sake, I'm going to cut this cable in half at the exact middle of these two marks. And then if my measurements are off, hopefully I'll have enough at each end, enough extra to make up for any measuring mistakes. This is what it looks like to work on a sailboat. I'm so glad I am not in the water. I'm so glad I'm not living on it yet. So that's looking a little less unprofessional. Unfortunately, Tartan doesn't have a very accessible bilge. So it's tricky to get, but I'm actually pretty happy with the result. I think maybe I'll do a little bit more to try to tidy up that area. But I like the idea that the wires are out of the way. My companionway has been giving me some grief. And like anything, it's kind of like a archaeological expedition to understand. I think originally the companionway just rode on top of the gel coat. And my reason for believing that is you can see that there's kind of a groove worn down. But you can also see that there's a bunch of glue in there. I've been chipping away at that this morning. Some point, again, I don't think this is original, but I don't know if there's any way to even know. I believe a previous owner got these plastic strips and glued them in to prevent, continually wearing away at the cabin top, which makes sense, except it raised companionway enough that it tends to get jammed when it goes into the companionway cover. I want to keep some kind of wear strip like this. These ones are kind of thick. I don't know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the existing glue and then try to put down a much thinner layer of adhesive to hold these strips in place and see if it still rubs. See if I can get them in there thin enough that it doesn't rub. So that's it for another week. That's it for another week. I've got stuff to do still. I made really good progress. The cockpit sort of looks like a cockpit again. The boat sort of looks like a boat again. The number of things that have to be done before it can go in the water the list is getting pretty short. The biggest is the instruments, and specifically the instruments on the mast. I was going to work, the original plan is I was going to work all day Saturday and go home Sunday. And I was starting to get burned out, so I figured I'd work this morning while it was cool and then drive home this afternoon. It's Saturday, but I can't even get started. I need to take a day or two off. So that's where we are.